Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's session, whether you're tuning in live or watching on demand. We should be live across YouTube, X, and LinkedIn. Today's session is all around trust quality. Really important discussion at this moment of time. A lot of DFE guidance around this area, and I'm joined by a really good panel today of a mix of industry experts, people being in the space for many years, and also two trust CEOs as well, who can give their insight into life in their trust and what trust quality means to them too. Just a bit of housekeeping to get started. If you're watching us across those platforms, this is a live and interactive session. So any discussion points, any comments that you have, or any questions for our panel today, please do get typing in the comments section on your chosen platform. We'll try to get around as many questions as we can today, but the session will last between 30 to 40 minutes probably. I'll probably keep recapping that just in case anyone joins late. But without further ado, really, I'll get us introduced to some of our panelists for today. So we'll start with Carla Whelan, who is CEO at Empower Trust. Hi, Carla, how are you?
Hi, Matt. Hi, I'm fine, thank you.
Brilliant. So give us a bit of an introduction to Empower Trust, the kind of size, and a bit of an introduction as to why you joined the panel.
Okay, well, obviously the trust quality descriptors came sort of high profile in the summer term, and that's when I started my journey as a CEO, being appointed in April, starting in September. So quite a key part in the work that I've been doing since September at the trust. We're a trust of primary schools, currently 8 primary schools, that's aspiring to grow, and very passionate about collaboration and being a part of the contribution to the educational arena at the moment. So looking at how the trust quality descriptors help us and support us to become a strong trust over the next couple of years, and what does actually that look like in terms of the criteria around it and how do we measure that? So yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah, brilliant. Well, we'll come back to you shortly with some questions, I hope. Carla, I'll get on to the next panelist. I'll bring to the stage Nick. Hi, Nick. How are you?
Hey, Matt. I am very well, thank you.
Brilliant. So yeah, just give us a bit of an insight as to your role, obviously from Iris Education, one of our partners.
Yeah, so we are a relatively large UK software company. We make lots of software for schools, from finance to MIS, and I look after a few of those. I look after our MIS product, but I also look after our new analytics platform. And I'm an ex-primary deputy head. I was a teacher for about 11 years before escaping. So I have a real interest in how schools, it was a bit of an escape, how schools use data. And I'm particularly interested in the trust quality standards. Because actually I think they're quite interesting in themselves, because they give a good framework in lots of ways, but I'm interested in how schools actually measure those without adding to their workload and spending all their time providing measurements, which I think we've done a lot in the past in education.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Nick. Great introduction. We'll move on to our second trust CEO, Andy. Hi, Andy. How are you?
I'm great, thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. A little bit about me. So I'm on my second CEO role, firstly as a secondary CEO with 3 secondary schools, and now leading 9 primary schools. So really exciting, great to now have a kind of broader experience across sort of primary and secondary. The trust quality descriptors to me are a really useful way of helping us as trust leaders both understand expectations placed upon us, but also framing the kind of multi-academy trust I think we all want to be part of. Those trusts that are really high quality in terms of the education, but also in the way we work with our other colleagues, the way we work with the workforce, within the communities. So I am excited by the quality descriptors, because I do think it gives us that kind of roadmap. Our job is to navigate how we as leaders can work within these descriptors to place our organisation in the strongest possible place within the sector.
Yeah, brilliant. Great scene setting there, and we'll come back to some of those points shortly. Last but not least, thank you, Andrew, is Jen. So we work with EPM as a strategic partner here at Matter, and we've done a lot of pieces around this narrative of trust quality, haven't we, Jen? Oh, just unmute yourself there, I think, Jen.
Sorry, let me try
There
again.
we go.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks, and good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, we've worked really closely together this year, which has been a real privilege for us. And I think some of the events we've done, including actually Andy and Nick on this call, we've had some round tables where we've really discussed data. We work with 200 trusts at EPM and 2,000 schools, so we've got some great insights into what trusts are doing. And it was a real pleasure to host a round table on people strategy, where we really deep dived into the kind of data trusts are sitting on and actually how they can use that data to really inform some of the strategic decisions that they're making. So really interested to look at those trust descriptors and how we can really put those into action.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, it was a really good session. Heard some great feedback from the trust leaders that attended that. So yeah, great. Thank you very much, Jen. So we'll start off the session with essentially what is trust quality when we are referring to this. I'll come to Andy first, someone in the CEO role day in, day out. What's kind of, well, what is it first of all? What is a high quality trust, Andy?
Okay, so I think just step back a little bit in terms of how did we get where we are? And a lot of you out there, trust leaders, you will have already been aware of some of the material that has been kind of drip feed into the sector over the last couple of years. And this has kind of culminated now into these descriptors. So the government want all schools to be in a high quality trust. It was a strong trust. It's now a high quality trust, which is great. We want that too. And so what we've got now is a set of new standards which they expect trust to meet. Okay, these trusts will be encouraged to grow. And so those standards are based on a number of pillars, and those pillars look at leadership, quality of education, strategic governance, finance and operation, and workforce. So those are, and within those, we've now got some targets. Some of them are hard targets in terms of quality education, so we can measure those. And Nick and Jen will come in with in terms of data. Some of them are more soft in terms of narrative, how we communicate. But this is all linked as well with the CEO framework, which again feeds into these things. So we've now got within the sector these descriptors with some measurable targets, some are not so measurable, and it's our job now to really work out and thrash out what does that mean for us as individuals. So I hope that gives us a bit of a flavour. I wouldn't underestimate the importance of this. I was at a meeting with my colleagues in the RSC the other day talking about trust growth, and my colleague said, and of course we'll be making reference to high quality trust descriptors. So that was an interesting comment. And so it is now feeding in the conversation that we're having with those colleagues that are making the decisions about us and our fit for purpose as an organization.
Yeah, really good. Thank you for that introduction, Andrew. Perfect. Carly, you've been doing this piece recently, and you're actually speaking about it at our Mac Growth conference in April around your strategic planning against those trust quality descriptors. Yeah, give us a bit of an insight into that process as well, how you've got about starting with that.
Okay, yeah, well, I sort of met them head on as a new CEO, thinking, well, they provide a framework, so let's use them. So all of our trust strategic and improvement plan is formed around those pillars. So 5 sections to it. From that, I formed KPIs that feed from the trust descriptors. Those feed into success criteria that have got actions based over the year. And then what I've also incorporated is the MAT assurance framework and the CST evaluative toolkit, and put in at the end evaluative questions that you then can judge yourself against those KPIs. So I've tried to incorporate all of the documents that we have available, as Andrew said, that have been given to us as a boundary, as a framework, try to incorporate those into the strategic planning that we do across the trust. And then obviously that then feeds into the CEO reports that I provide for my trustees. So hopefully I'm hoping a seamless link between all of those sort of boundaries and criteria, but also making it very much measurable from our own perspective. As Andrew said earlier, though, it's an interesting growth and development, I think, over the next 12 months of, what is being deemed as success in certain areas, because obviously there's statements against those descriptors, but those statements can be interpreted in very different ways by very different trusts. So it will be very interesting to see any summary evaluations that come out over the next year, and any peer review work that's done over the next year, to see what sort of things are being seen as relevant data, that we can hook into to show that evidence base against being a strong trust.
Yeah, definitely. And just on those trust quality descriptors, we'll come to you, Nick, on speaking to trust day in, day out. How do you measure those data wise? And then we'll come to Jen shortly after on that workforce side of things as well, because Andrew mentioned there around some are hard to incorporate, some not so much. So we'll come to you first, Nick.
Yeah, so I'm really privileged. I get to speak to lots of trusts every day. And as Carla was talking, I was instantly thinking, how are you collecting that data? Where are you getting that from? How long does it take you to build up those pictures? And certainly, most of my focus as looking after one of our products is how we make that easy for schools. And most of our trusts are now coming to us and saying, we have to do this, or we're really interested in engaging with these trust quality standards, whether they are the CST version that's been slightly added to, or the original DFE version. And what we are trying to do is help them collect that data, I would say organically, because otherwise, we all know that if we work in this industry, there's a lot of kind of cutting and sticking, a lot of digital cutting and sticking. And we want to avoid that as much as possible. And I think the trust quality standards, a lot of them are relatively easy to say, okay, well, we need to get evidence for that and we can provide that. But some of them are harder. When I've had conversations with trust about measuring culture, I'm really interested in culture outside of all of this anyway. But trusts have said, well, actually, we've affected the culture of our trust through photocopying contracts. And there's these kind of interesting little nuggets of changing the culture of a trust using something really benign, such as saving £6,000 a year on a photocopying contract, has made somebody trust them, and therefore they've come on board and allowed them to spend money in different ways or do different things. And those things can be measured. We can say, well, actually, we've saved that money, therefore they're happier about these things. So, and I don't want to speak for too much longer, but also talking to the DFE, one of the phrases that they mentioned was, how do we measure the unmeasurables like culture? And I think it's a really important thing to think about. How can we, as a data company or as a company with privileged access to lots of data, how can we help schools to stick that together without spending all their time doing so?
Yeah, no, really important question as well. Obviously, you have a huge abundance of data, and obviously making use of all of that and providing that as really useful data for the trust must be quite a challenge. So, Jen, and then we'll come on to the workforce side of things, because that is a key contributor. We spoke about community as well just before this as well. So we'll come to Carla shortly after you on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the workforce, I think, is the data is really interesting. I think to echo some of Nick's points, some of it is really straightforward in terms of statistics. We can look at retention, we can look at things like absence cost, we can look at time to fill a vacancy. We can get all of that data really easily, actually. It may not be all in one system, but that's exactly what we're working on very closely with IRIS at the moment, to get that at the fingertips of the people that need it. Do trustees have this information to hand, and are the right decisions being made on the right data is something that's front and centre of our minds at the moment. But the piece around culture is really interesting to me, because yes, you can do surveys. There's some great surveying tools out there. There's lots of different ways of measuring that. But actually, it's got to be measured right down the organisation as well. And I come down all the time to line managers, because I think you can set your ethos, you can set your trust. If you look through all of this descriptor information, which I've got pages of it in front of me here, culture is highlighted as the top piece everywhere. But how do you ensure that culture? You can set it at the top, but I'm really interested in, when the MATs we're working with, how we make sure it goes right through the organisation. How line managers to me are absolutely key, because if you've got good line managers making good decisions and doing the right things, the culture of the trust it's living and breathing, isn't it? And you can see that. So to me, really investing in that layer of employees as well, making sure that they've got great career development, great training, will be the single most thing actually that changes culture of a trust, in my view, making sure that it's fed all the way through. So data is absolutely key. And I just think setting that vision, we talked about that no end at the people strategy session that we had. It came up time and time again as a theme: ethos, culture, but sort of the how, because I think people know how to talk about that, but they don't know how to put it into practice. And I guess that's what we'll hear from Carla in a second, but there's some really interesting debates going around about that at the moment. Also think with the election being imminent, we've got trust sort of almost going on pause too early, in my view, around trust growth, thinking like, do we just hold off for a second? And our advice really strongly is no there. It's honestly, use the time really effectively, get your growth plans in really good shape now. It's a fantastic time to sort of consolidate and to think about the next step, and really strategically what you need to do as a team, central teams particularly, to be fit for scale and fit for growth.
Jen, you're leading on the conversation better than I could, so we'll come to Carla. We were discussing community just as we were in the green room waiting to go live, and that's a real buzzword at the moment. And Andrew, if you want to piggyback off of any points that Carla makes too, that'd be great.
Yeah, I sort of mentioned that obviously community is heart. I think that became really, really obvious during the pandemic as well, didn't it? That, the schools were the places that families were going to. And I suppose really I'm not against that as a philosophy. I think it's crucial. However, it's that security of what does that look like from a small and a large institution, and actually what's the effect of working with your communities? How do you judge the impact of working with communities? And making sure that you're getting back from that investment, because working with communities and growing community plans and business plans and working with local industries takes a lot of resources from a school. Very much useful and very much contribute back into the school, but it's that manageability of that for smaller establishments and smaller schools that concerns me. It's becoming a huge topic and a really important part of what is deemed to be good schools, good trusts, but it is a resource pull. And I think that then comes back to the factor of looking at these trust descriptors and how the equality of those can be proven from a larger trust who have more resources and capacity against a smaller trust that potentially, you mentioned growth just a moment ago, Jen, which absolutely looking at your central team to support capacity and make sure that you've got a robust central team. That isn't necessarily an easy feat for a smaller trust where financially that's more of a struggle. A larger trust maybe has the more financial capacity to grow and be a bit more maverick with their central team before growth, to set up ready for growth, than a smaller trust has that capacity. So again, it's the equality of those trust descriptors. Are they fair against both institutions of small and larger trusts? I don't know what your thoughts are, Andrew.
Oh, I think what's interesting, Carl, coming back to the questions and some of the things you talked about initially with what you've done in your trust, and I think you can be overwhelmed by all this. And I think what you've done is the same process that I've gone through. Right, first of all, are we all aware, the key people in your organisation aware of the quality descriptors? That's the first thing. Second thing is, as you've done, is well, let's break this down and let this be part of our strategic planning, breaking each section, each pillar. And actually that is our strategic plan, quality of education. What I'd say is, I think the good exercise that we went through, and I work in a smaller trust, okay, with the resource challenges of small, particularly primary trusts at the moment, with student numbers and all those challenges that brings. But actually it's taking it one step at a time, isn't it? We're actually doing a lot of these things. Yeah. And I think if leaders are listening to this conversation, and you look at these quality descriptors, think, oh my goodness me, let's just step back, make it part of your strategic plan. Let's have a look what you're doing well, even better if, and actually trying to just map out your journey as an organization. Because I think we could all look at these. If I was not a 30, 40 million pound trust with a huge infrastructure and systems in place, I'm going, okay, I'm going to have my team doing this. Some trusts aren't in that position yet. And I think by just stepping back and just unpicking the descriptors, I think it certainly calmed our team down. Actually, we're doing okay on this. So what do we need to focus on?
By doing the plan like we have with the strategic element, I phased it over a 2-year period as opposed to a 1-year action plan, because it's very clear that we can achieve this in 1 year. That's more of a longer term journey, building up, for instance, our HR team. So by doing that, we've also been able to really phase over more than a 1-year program, so that the overwhelming factor of it feels much more manageable through that. So completely agree. It's got to be something that doesn't overwhelm your central team as you go on that growth journey. Interesting.
Yeah, some great points from you there. Obviously, some really good advice for any listeners now or on demand as well. So just a reminder that you can get any questions or any comments into the comments section. We'll try to get around to them to answer them during the session. If you want them targeted to any of our panelists in particular as well, do let us know. Nick, I'm just going to come to you on a point that Carla mentioned there around the difference of being a larger trust versus a smaller trust, and the growth piece. Is that something that lines up with what you hear as well?
Actually, I'm going to be honest and say that I've not heard that before, but it's actually really interesting. And perhaps I should have thought of it before. I think, the standards have to be a kind of catch-all for all of the trusts, but, all of our, especially primary school trusts, which I work with a lot, they have different characters and different challenges. Obviously, my bias is toward primary because that's where I worked. Different challenges, and from a data point of view, I'm interested in how we can support that in making sure that the standards that we pull out the right data and that we marry the right data to show where that's going. So it's certainly interesting. I've made a note to go and have a look at some of those things.
And Matt, we're asked constantly for benchmarking data, because I think that's exactly what people want to know. For our size of the trust right here, right now, what should we be doing? What should the salaries be? What should our absence rate? All of that information is, I guess, at our fingertips, working with 200 trusts across so many different sizes and shapes, right from the sort of national large trusts to the smaller groups of primary schools. And I do think the data sets are very, very different, and the policies, the procedures, the strategy needs to sort of follow suit. Because even if I just put an HR hat on for a second and say, from a people perspective, it needs to be so different, I think, depending on the size of the central team, the way in which the scheme of delegation works within the trust. There's so many factors that make a big difference. But benchmarking data is key, I think, to this.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of you may have already seen, but we've got a QR code in the top corner there. So obviously, if you want to reach out and learn a little bit more, as Jen says, a lot of trusts reach out around that benchmarking piece, and scan that QR code there, and that'll take you through to a link to put you in touch. So, Andrew, just on that benchmarking side of things as well, and also I have a separate question on top of this. Matt, summative evaluations. Now, you were one of the first, or the first, to go through that process.
Very interesting process. I mean, and again, this is all about the questions for us was, what is the impact of the trust in your organization? And again, we've talked about culture, and it's like this, it's like the sort of black pool in the stick of rock. It permeates through all the descriptors, and I think it's back to awareness. If you are focused on those descriptors, actually, they're quite sensible if you look at them. And if you've got the relevant data to understand the bits that you're good at, the bits that you need to work on, I think it's a good starting point. I mean, I found the MAPC evaluation is a positive experience only if you understand your organization and you've got a clear direction where you're going, and you've been able to evaluate the things that you need to do in your particular roadmap and in your particular journey. And again, it's echoing what everybody's really said. Are you aware? Have you got a plan? And have you got the data to support the decisions that you're making, and also to support the resources that you need to, whether they're limited or whether they're not, that you've got the data in place to support the decisions you're going to make. And that's really important. And I think if you do that, then if you do get the telephone call, you're going to be in a strong place.
Yeah, it was strange, obviously, when I first started talking to you, Andrew, and first met you. When I started mentioning around the MAT summative evaluations, a lot of MAT leaders had no idea what they were whatsoever, which is, essentially an Ofsted that doesn't go public, isn't it, at MAT level. Carla, has your trust gone through that process just out of interest? I don't want to put any faces on, but
not yet. I am engaging though in a peer review system with Forum Strategy, and working with challenge partners to get really clued up with the process, so is that I can bring that back to our trust to sort of use positively. Because as Andrew said, I don't think it's a negative process if you're looking at it in an evaluative way and thinking, what do our trust do well, and then what are our sort of key priorities over the next couple of years. I'm looking really hopefully to gain a lot from the peer review system with Forum Strategy, because I'll be hooking into expertise from different CEOs who can look at what is, quite a fresh trust, in the sense it's been here since 2018, but due to a number of reasons and the pandemic hasn't really grown. So we're just at the cusp of the growth periods and looking at how we expand over the next couple of years. So, it'll be a really exciting process for me to get that feedback and to get that support from CEOs that have been doing it a number of years. But I think, I think the key thing, as Andrew said, is mindset around, seeing these documents as toolkits that give us a framework, looking at them in a positive way, using them for that evaluation, and then making sure that you're building them into your strategic planning. So as Andrea said, it's a communication across the trust. So is that everybody, within schools at every level understands why decisions are being made at trust level. If you don't know that the trust descriptors are there, then there are some decisions being made at trust level that you might think, well, why do we need to do that? We've got X, Y, and Z going on at our school. We don't need to do that. But if you've got an understanding that actually, as a group of schools, you should be aligned in common language, for instance, for assessment, then actually it makes any changes that you make in regard to assessment a lot easier for schools to understand and process. So I think it's that communication of the purpose of them and meaningful change. This is meaningful change to improve not only the trust but your individual school as well. So
yeah, brilliant. We are just approaching half an hour. Gosh, that's go quick. What I think we should end on is, based on your expertise, what is your kind of top tip for the remainder of this academic year to really get your ducks in a row? Nick, I'm going to put you on the spot.
You can put me on the spot. I think what we've seen a lot, and we've built a set of tools, a set of dashboards, essentially, working with some of our trusts that start to bring together some of these things, and they're by no means finished. We are looking at measuring the unmeasurable. We're looking at how we measure culture as a thread that goes through those dashboards, but starting with what schools know, and allowing that kind of common language of communication so that these dashboards can be shared internally. They're live all the time, or we can look at a snapshot in time so that no one is surprised, so that when people do come and want to know how things are going, no one is surprised, no one is kind of shocked by what's going on, and we can easily see the improvements. So I would say, find a set of data that doesn't cost you too much effort to get. And I've seen lots of trusts that they don't necessarily use our platform. I'd love you to use our platform, but they don't necessarily. And there's some great stuff out there where people have started to pull together evidence that they are meeting these strands, and just pulling together the evidence that shows the strands that you do know about. Maybe just the easy ones to start with will take a lot of the pressure off. and allow you to talk about the more nuanced ones more easily. So, and you know, there's a lot of investigation that we're doing around AI to look at pulling out some of those things. Some really exciting stuff from a kind of geeky technology point of view that I think will really pay dividends to trusts eventually by helping them to pull out some of those more nuanced or more difficult strands.
Yeah, brilliant. So evidence and data and potentially AI as well. So Jen, we'll come on to you next.
Yeah, I think we do readiness to grow reviews, which are sort of an external look into the organisation to give an open-minded and I guess independent view of a trust's position and readiness to grow. And that and the round table, I think the outputs of both of those things for us have been the amount of change that's going on in trusts at the moment is immense. So many initiatives. And I think the key overriding factor for us is just have a look at how many initiatives are going on in the school or trust, which ones are most important, and focus on a few of those, because it's impossible. If you look at the list, sometimes there's sort of over 100 initiatives that trusts are working on, and you can't do all of those well. So pick the key ones, pick the few that will really make a difference, and put time and energy into those would be my key advice.
Andrew, up next. Thanks, Jen.
I'd say embrace this. It's a fantastic opportunity for you as a trust leader to take some well thought through descriptors and have a good think about your organisation. Carla talked about taking them, as I've already said, as the priorities. And on top of what Jen and Nick has said, this is your opportunity as a leader to really look at your organisation, look at those things you're doing well, look at those things that you need to focus on, and look at those things that are going to have the maximum impact, because ultimately your organisation will be measured against this criteria.
Yeah, brilliant. Great summary there. Carla, last but not least.
Well, I'd first start off with stock up on your vitamins, because you might hear from my voice that I've got a cold that's been a permanent one. I think for me, it's also collaboration, you know, really utilising your colleagues, hooking in and getting a network of other CEOs and other trusts, and, you know, not having a fragmented competitive system, actually having a really sort of collaborative collegial system where we can use the expertise from other trusts, and using it as an opportunity to join together, as opposed to having that sense of competition around trust, which unfortunately, I think, you know, in some areas, I'm fortunate that I'm not in an area like that, but I think that we have got a danger of potentially ending up like that if we don't try to bring trust leaders together. So using the framework as your strategic focus, but also collaborating and using people's expertise wider than your local authority, and more national, so you can get a flavour of how people are using those productively.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. That's a great last point to finish on. Thank you all of our panelists today. We do typically get 80 to 90% of our viewers after going live. So we do always get questions, strangely, after the session, thinking that they are watching it live. So if you do have any questions for any of our panelists or any comments, happy to obviously put you in touch myself. I should be on the page that you're watching this on somewhere, or of course I believe all of you have LinkedIn as well. So yeah, happy to connect there. Thank you all. If you can all just hold on for a minute after I finish going live, and we'll have a quick recap. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.